Daniel stood on the edge of the old wooden bridge, his breath visible in the cold morning air. Behind him was everything he'd ever known, a life of routines, disappointments, and safe choices that led nowhere. Ahead, nothing but uncertainty. But for the first time in his life, uncertainty felt more promising than the comfort of failure. He had spent the last 10 years doing what everyone told him to do: get a steady job, stay humble, don't dream too big. And yet, here he was, broke, exhausted, and invisible. It wasn't just the job that drained him, it was the weight of living someone else's version of life. But something had shifted. Maybe it was the final rejection email from the company he dreamed of, or the look in his friend's eyes when he said, "Maybe you're just not meant for more." That sentence echoed louder than any scream. Daniel didn't just walk across the bridge. He set it on fire, metaphorically, and decided he was never going back. No plan B, no safety net, just a raw, burning need to finally live for himself. He wasn't sure what waited for him on the other side. But he knew this: nothing would ever be the same again. The first few days after Daniel left everything behind felt like freedom. No alarm clocks, no draining emails, just the open road and a backpack that barely held enough to get by. He stayed in cheap motels, ate whatever he could afford, and scribbled ideas in a notebook like his life depended on it, because now, it did. But freedom has a short honeymoon. By the second week, doubt crept in like a slow fog. The money he had saved was vanishing faster than he thought. The ideas that once poured onto the pages started to feel scattered and pointless. He began questioning whether he had made a huge mistake. He tried pitching freelance gigs online, but no one responded. He walked into cafes asking for part-time work, but no one was hiring. Every rejection chipped away at the fiery resolve he had when he walked across that bridge. One rainy night, Daniel sat on a park bench, soaked and shivering, eating instant noodles he bought with the last few coins in his pocket. He stared at the steam rising from the cup, wondering if it would be easier to just go back, apologize, ask for his old job, pretend none of this ever happened. But then he thought about that bridge, the one he burned. He remembered why he did it, not out of rage, but because he knew that comfort was his cage. He realized something powerful: the safety net he missed so much was also the very thing that kept him from flying. That night, he made a decision. He would give himself 30 more days, no matter how hard, no matter how broke. 30 days to prove that a person doesn't need a perfect plan to make progress, just relentless belief. He tore out a page from his notebook and wrote in big, bold letters, "I'll either make it, or I'll make it." There was no other option. And with that, Daniel got up from the bench and started walking, not back toward the past, but into whatever came next. The next morning, he woke up early, his clothes still damp, but his mindset different. He walked into the public library, sat down at a computer, and began researching small business grants, storytelling contests, and local networking meetups. He wasn't looking for a miracle, just a thread to pull. He emailed 20 strangers with an offer to write their bios, blogs, or brand stories, anything to practice his skill and earn a few bucks. 19 ignored him. But one replied. That one reply would change everything, but not yet. For now, it was enough to remind Daniel that forward is forward, even if it's slow. Progress was no longer a miracle he hoped for. It was a choice he made, again and again, every hour of every day. The email that changed Daniel's life wasn't from a big company or a major influencer. It was from a woman named Claire who ran a tiny online shop that sold handmade journals. She said she liked the way Daniel wrote, raw, honest, and full of life. She asked him to help rewrite her brand story for a small fee. It wasn't much, but to Daniel, it was everything. Not just the money, it was proof that someone, somewhere, saw value in his voice. Claire's project led to a referral, then another, and another. Word of mouth spread faster than he expected. And soon, Daniel found himself with a backlog of small writing jobs. He wasn't rich, not even close, but for the first time, his passion was feeding him, literally. With every project, he learned, he listened, he improved. He created a simple website and called his new venture, Storycraft, a name that reflected what he was really doing, helping people find power in their own stories. His clients weren't big brands. They were underdogs like him, artists, small business owners, and creators trying to stand out in a noisy world. Daniel was no longer just surviving. He was building. And something deeper was happening, too. The more stories he helped others tell, the more he reconnected with his own. His doubts didn't disappear, but they no longer ruled him. Every challenge became fuel. Every deadline a promise kept to the man who had once been shivering on a bench with nothing but noodles and a notebook. Daniel started speaking at small events, local meetups, library workshops, even community centers. He shared not just tips on writing, but his journey, the burned bridges, the nights of fear, the moment he chose to believe in something bigger than failure. One day, after a small event, a teenager approached him and said, "Your story made me feel like I can start over too." That single sentence hit Daniel harder than any paycheck ever could. That was the moment he knew, this wasn't just a hustle anymore. It was a mission. He wasn't chasing success for validation. He was creating something that helped others believe in their own second chances. He wasn't just rebuilding his life, he was building a bridge for others who were still stuck on the edge. And he swore he'd never go back, not because he couldn't, but because now, he didn't need to. Momentum was building, but life still had a few more tests for Daniel. A month after launching Storycraft, he landed a deal with a mid-sized startup looking for a full content revamp. It was his biggest project yet, tight deadline, high stakes, and a paycheck that could buy him more than noodles. It felt like everything he'd worked for was finally aligning. Until his laptop crashed. He lost drafts, contacts, project notes, everything. No backups, no recovery. 4 hours. He sat frozen in disbelief. He felt that old voice creeping in again, "See, you're not built for this, go back." But this time, he didn't let the voice win. He pulled an all-nighter at the library, piecing together what he remembered. Then another, and another. He emailed the startup and owned the mistake, no excuses. He promised he'd still meet the deadline. They gave him one more chance. For 3 days straight, Daniel barely slept. He lived on coffee, motivation, and pure determination. By the deadline, he submitted the entire project, complete, polished, and even better than his original drafts. The client was so impressed they doubled his fee and referred him to 2 other companies. That week changed everything. He bought a new laptop and invested in cloud storage. He hired a part-time assistant to help with admin tasks. And for the first time, Daniel stopped calling himself a freelancer. He called himself a founder. But the real turning point wasn't the money or the momentum. It was the moment he realized he could be knocked down and still come back stronger. That adversity didn't mean failure, it meant progress. He had built resilience. And that resilience was now his greatest asset. Daniel looked back once more, not with regret, but with gratitude. Every rejection, every sleepless night, every cold bench had taught him something. He didn't just survive the fire, he came out forged. His story wasn't a straight line. It was jagged and messy and real. And that made it powerful. Later that month, a well-known podcast invited Daniel to share his story. At first, he hesitated. Public speaking had never been his thing. But then he remembered that park bench, the cold night, the noodles. He said yes. His voice trembled through the first few minutes of the recording, but once he began to talk about resilience, about taking the leap and burning the bridge, the words flowed like they were waiting to be spoken for years. The episode went viral. Hundreds of messages flooded his inbox, people who felt seen, inspired, challenged. Strangers told him they quit toxic jobs, started long-forgotten dreams, or just took the first brave step toward change. Some were single moms, others were college dropouts, a few were retirees starting over. Daniel realized that stories don't just entertain, they liberate. That was the moment he knew he'd never measure success by money or followers. He'd measure it by impact. Because in the end, it wasn't the fire that defined him. It was what he built from the ashes. Years passed, and Daniel's story continued to unfold, not in headlines, but in quiet victories. He still ran Storycraft, though it had grown into a team. He no longer lived paycheck to paycheck, but he never forgot what it felt like. His morning walks often took him past old bridges, some literal, others just memories of who he used to be. One morning, while sipping coffee in a small cafe, he overheard 2 students talking about giving up on their dreams. He walked over, offered to pay for their breakfast, and shared just a little bit of his journey. Not the success, the struggle. Because that's what people really need to hear. Daniel had no idea where those students would end up, But he knew one thing for sure, he was no longer the man who needed saving. He had become the man who gave others a reason to believe. Not by being perfect, but by proving that imperfect people can still write powerful stories. And sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones that begin when everything falls apart. Because that's when you finally stop pretending, and start becoming. As he left the cafe, Daniel smiled, not because life was easy now, but because he had earned every scar, every win, and every moment of peace that came after the storm. That day, he opened his notebook again, just like he used to. On the first page, he wrote, "This is only the beginning." Because people like Daniel, they don't just come back. They rise. Daniel's journey wasn't about luck, talent, or timing. It was about choosing to move forward when everything told him to turn back. About burning the bridge, not in anger, but in commitment. About trusting that even if he couldn't see the next step, the path would appear as long as he kept walking. His story teaches us something simple, yet powerful: you don't need a perfect plan. You just need the courage to begin, and the resilience to keep going. So if you're standing on your own metaphorical bridge right now, wondering whether to cross it or turn back, ask yourself this: what's really holding you back? Fear, comfort, the voices in your head telling you you're not enough? You are enough. But you won't know what's possible until you let go of the shore and start swimming. Your story might be messy, it might not go the way you imagined, but that's what makes it yours, that's what makes it real. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there is waiting for your story to give them permission to start theirs. So take the step. Burn the bridge. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, for more stories that remind you of what you're capable of. Your story is still being written. Hit like if this moved you. Share your story in the comments. Subscribe for more real, raw, inspiring comebacks. This isn't just a story. It's your spark. And the best is yet to come.